Hey there. I thought it'd be pretty helpful to do a patch video for this song I just made yesterday, which I'm going to share in full. I'm calling it Hall of Columns because it's kind of ambient. I really like ambient music, but I haven't made a great deal of it. But I have a system here that does a really good job with it, so I'm glad to have made a chill piece yesterday that I'm happy with. So right now what you're hearing is the first sound I came up with. I started with Just Friends by Mannequins. It's in audio mode, so it has the capability of being an envelope generator and also an audio generator. I have it in audio mode as I mentioned, and all of the outputs, which are at the bottom, are related by the harmonic series. You can do undertones or overtones, and right now it's set to overtones, which means it's major harmonics that stack on top of the main note. And if you want to hear what the notes sound like, I'll just turn this to fully dry, because everything is being fed into this Monsoon, which is a copy of Mutable Instruments Clouds that's a little bit more compact. What I have is I have tracks 2 and 3 on this mixer, accepting the first 2 notes coming from Just Friends, and they're being aux sent to the Monsoon. My first aux send is to the Monsoon, and my second aux send on my mixer is to the Magneto. So the first 2 notes are being aux sent to the left input on the Monsoon, and the third note off of Just Friends, so that I have some stereo, is just going to a VCA and then heading into Monsoon. Now all 3 of these notes are being volume modulated so that it comes and goes and is a little bit more organic and movementy, I guess you could say. In this case, the third note from this VCA, the VCA is being modulated by a trapezoid wave. Actually, all 3 are trapezoid waves off the Batumi at different speeds that aren't really correlated, so they're aligning and misaligning and changing. And the way that I'm modulating tracks 2 and 3, which are the first 2 pitches, is actually using these VCA style inputs on this performance mixer. I absolutely love this. So if you don't have a jack in here, you just use your fader to control the volume. But if you do put a jack in, you can modulate the volume with a voltage. So these are essentially acting like the VCA over here. It doesn't have the exponential linear control like this Intellijel VCA, but it's still modulating the volume per the VCA. So this is the dry signal, and the Monsoon is a unit. The clouds tends to cut up the audio, and it can put it back together with a certain amount of feedback. You can change the number of grains that it's capturing, granular, or the number of grains that you hear, the shape of the grains, how smooth or abrupt they are. And then you can add stereo interest, which the stereo width's maximized on this patch. But you can also add reverb. So I had it about here, I believe. And it just adds a lot more interest to that droning sound that you're hearing. The second thing that I created was this track 5. Now, track 5 is coming from the Piston Honda, which is on the far left top of the bottom rack here. just a single note. And what's happening is this X parameter, which is the wavetable, which is the X, Y, and Z are moving through a cubic wavetable in 3 dimensions. So the X is moving through one layer of the wavetable. And what happens here is if you modulate one of the 3 parameters and leave the other 2 static, there are a number of different wavetables where that kind of creates, again, harmonics going up and down above the root note. So I found one that I liked here. It was Z1 and everything else 0. And that's being modulated from this other Batumi really slowly, but this has got the expert firmware, and I'm modulating it in a random, smooth random shape that is fairly, it jumps around, but the Piston Honda transforms between the waveforms in a really smooth manner if you have it set to do so. You can have it abruptly switch between waveforms, or you can have it smoothly morph. And right now it's set to smoothly morph, so I have a smooth random waveform that's modulating it, and it tends to make it pretty neat and organic. Now, the third thing I did was take track 5, which is this lower root note, and pass it into Magneto using the aux send. So let's bring up Magneto, which is on track 8. I have the Monsoon coming back through track 7, which is a stereo track, and the Magneto coming back through track 8, which is also a stereo track. So I'm using my 2 stereo tracks for my effects and blending them back in, and I'm also sending them cross aux to each other. So I'm sending a little bit of the Monsoon over to the input of the Magneto, and I'm sending a little bit of the input of the Magneto over to the Monsoon, and this just creates even a little bit more chaos. So the Magneto input has a little bit of the Monsoon and mostly this bass track that I created, which is just a drone. The Magneto is set into shift mode, so it's not a traditional echo in shift mode, it's a pitch shifter echo, so it's taking slices of the sound and doubling them or changing them to a new harmonic, and each of the knobs will create a different harmonic output. And as you can see, the knobs are all over the place. You can change the panning of each spot, and I messed with that a bit, and I tried to find a setting where it was pleasing. The majority of the harmonics that were coming out were pleasing, and these 2 controls are fairly down because they were creating more clashing harmonics. Also having the speed pitch relatively high, that is a treblier sound on this. If you create a lower speed pitch, it tends to sound more aliased and more dull. And I wanted this to add a little bit of treble to the overall sound, because usually the modular tends to sound a little bit dull and mid-rangey right out of the box. The tap tempo, I tapped to the 8th note of the song. I tried some different permutations, but the 8th note of the song seemed like a really good idea. So then I added the drums. And let's start with this kick track. So I'm getting gates out of Hermod for the different drum parts. The first gate is for the kick, but that gate, I developed this on another patch. The gate itself is coming out up here, and it's being multed a bunch of times. It's even being multed down in this other mult down here. But it's being multed, and one of the mults is actually going to trigger the kick, and all the drums are coming from the Squid sample, which I have on a patch that I customized. So track 1 is the kick, and the Squid sample, I have a little bit of the attack rolled off because I don't want an attacky kick. I want kind of an ambient drone, and it also has some bit reduction and some sample rate reduction, which the Squid sample does an awesome job of. I really love it. I'm really in love with this unit for drums. And also for the last 3 tracks, which can do pitched samples, which I'm not using in this patch because it wasn't easy to input it on the fly as part of the live experience, so I decided to not do that. Otherwise, I probably would have sampled my piano or something else, and that just even with the phone is great, and then you just plug in. It's so easy. You could just you literally could plug your cell phone into the input here, set the record level, and capture the sample. You can capture something off the internet. You can do anything you want as long as you have permission to capture that sample. The kick is being multed, and one of the mults is going up to this Slew. This is an Intellijel noise tools, it's called, and it does have a Slew Generator. If you can see, I'm not sure on the camera, this green light, but this green light is pulsing on and gradually fading off, and the slew time controls how fast that goes. And what I'm doing with this is I'm bringing it into this Quadratt down here, and I've got a full 10 volts fixed on track 1, so it's a plus 10, and it's being summed with B, which is coming from the slew rate, and that's a slight negative offset. So we have a full 10 volt, and then when the kick pulses, we get a negative offset. We get a negative voltage in sort of a ducking shape. So we've got a ducking. And then I mult that slew, and I can put it in 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the volume VCA of my mixer. So each track, when the kick hits, it's very gently ducking all of the droning tracks. And this is a really nice effect. I'm doing it very gently on this song because I didn't want it to be distracting from the droniness, but it just adds a little bit of really nice movement. Last thing would be the cymbals, which I do have going into the effect and the snare. Let's turn those both on. Both coming from the Squid sample, both being triggered from the Hermod. There's some probability on the cymbal, so it doesn't come out on every single hit. And the snare is in a different meter, so it doesn't land the same place in every bar. Well, I hope that was helpful and interesting to you. That's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like or subscribe. It really makes a difference to my channel. Have a great day and enjoy the sun.